We went to the hospital to have our fourth baby girl, and this beautiful white Bolt parked next to us.
Hey guys, this is Black Bolt. Hope everybody's doing well. In today's video, I am going to talk about a potential buyback and also speculate a little bit more on the battery situation for the Chevy Bolt EVs and my thoughts on the buyback and my speculation on the batteries is based on a conversation that I had recently with somebody who works at GM and is very involved in the buyback process. So nothing I say is gospel, but I think it's pretty close to. And if that's the kind of content you're interested in, Chevy Bolt EV and electric cars in general, go ahead, like this video and subscribe so that you continue to get more content. And Google is already monetizing these videos, so you might as well help us content providers get some of that ad revenue. So with that said, I've had some time to think about how I wanted to present this information, but I'm just going to talk, so it's not going to be perfect. Like I said, I've had some conversations with somebody at General Motors, and I can't give you details on numbers, but what I will say is that the buyback is based on how lemon laws in your state or province are. So whatever I say may or may not be relevant to you depending on where you live. But the buyback that I am going to be offered is a really good deal for us financially. And we want to get a Tesla Model 3 to replace the Bolt, but our plan was to do that in about 18 months. And because of what's happening right now, we are not going to be able to replace the Chevy Bolt EV with a Tesla. Financially, it doesn't work for us. We are not willing to get back into debt for a car. We were presented three options, none of which are optimal for us. The first was to keep our Chevy Bolt EV and wait for a new battery. The second was to do an MSRP swap based on the buyback amount, of course. That would be either to get into another Chevy Bolt EV or EUV or into another GM ICE vehicle. And when we went further into that conversation, we found out that this swap wouldn't happen until the most recent recall, which includes 2020 to 2022 Chevy Bolts, is closed. With that being said, I asked some follow-up questions on how the recall would be closed. And basically, what I took out of that conversation is GM does not have batteries to replace in our cars. So whether you own a 2017 Chevy Bolt EV like I do, or a 2022 Chevy Bolt EUV, they don't have batteries that they consider good enough to install in our cars. So the third option was a straight cash buyback, and that's the one that we're leaning to unless they find a battery situation in the next 4 to 6 weeks. Basically, if GM can replace our battery with a good battery before they write us a check, that is our number one option. But if they're not able to do that, then we are going to take the money and explore other electric vehicles that we can buy with the check that we receive without going into debt. So the reason that I believe GM does not have these batteries is because they weren't able to give me any sort of timeline, either for when I would be able to get a new battery swapped into my 2017 Chevy Bolt EV, or if we elected to go with a swap for a 2020, 2021, or 2022 Chevy Bolt. They might have a car for us and they might hold that car for us, but they would not release that car off a dealer lot until the battery recall was closed. So that is an indefinite time frame. It could be next week, it could be 5 years from now. They simply don't know because they don't make the batteries. LG makes the batteries. GM doesn't trust LG with the quality of the batteries, and they have all of these bolts. Now, basically it amounts to every single bolt and bolt EUV that has ever been created needs a battery replacement. So you put one and one together, and what option do you have other than to take a buyback? I'm not a GM hater. I still like my Chevy Bolt EV. If the financial terms weren't as good as they are, I would just keep this Bolt and run it until it died. Personally, I think that the number of vehicles with bad battery modules is really, really low. But if you were in a market for a Bolt, and I've seen this question, which is why I'm addressing it, where people are still asking, would you buy a Bolt? I won't answer that for anybody else. I'll answer it this way though. Knowing what I know today, if I was to go back to July 2019, would I still buy the Chevy Bolt EV? My answer to that question is yes, because it was still the best value, and the risk of any individual Bolt actually catching fire is extremely low. The risk of a 2017 or 2018 catching fire is also extremely low. I wouldn't buy a 2019 for sure, and I would probably still buy a 2021 2022 Bolt EV, but that's just my personal opinion. All of this, of course, depends on your risk tolerance. I'm going to accept that order. It's $10 to drive 4.8 miles. So whether or not you would still buy a Chevy Bolt EV just depends entirely on your risk tolerance. So what are we going to do with the buyback money? My wife and I talked about it a lot. It's something that we have been considering since the most recent recall came out, and we deduced that they wouldn't have batteries for us. We can't afford a Tesla Model 3, new or used. They're simply too expensive for us. We're not going to get an ICE car because that would also be a step backwards. It would still cost us way too much in gasoline for it to be viable. So I'm not going to reveal the car that I think we'll buy, but it's going to be one that we buy in cash. And once I have the repurchase agreement on paper with the exact number, and I know for a fact that General Motors is going to be writing me a check and taking the keys for this car, then I'll talk more about which car we're going to get and why. It's kind of sad in a way because I really like the Bolt. Right now, I wouldn't discourage anyone from buying one because you know what the risks are if you choose to get one. And if you do buy one, by the way, eventually General Motors is going to replace the battery. As a vehicle, the Chevy Bolt EV is still a good car. I've got 142,436 miles on mine. So to me, it's proven its longevity. And to me, I think that if mine was going to catch fire, it probably would have happened by now. But there's no factual way for us to know that. And then again, it comes back to the financial terms, where they're just giving us an amount of money that for a car with 142,000 miles on it, it would be fiscally irresponsible for us to not take the money. So that's my update. I hope it wasn't too rambly for you guys. Go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe, and ask me any questions that you want to, keeping in mind that I'm not going to give you details on financial terms because I had a verbal conversation and nothing is written down on paper, so I don't want to share that. And also the fact that numbers are going to vary depending on your car, how much you paid for it, which state you bought it in, which state you currently live in, and all of that fine jazz. So hope everyone is doing great. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.